But it's very, very interesting. At a dwelling value perspective, we're sort of ending the year with Sydney on top, followed by Brisbane, followed by Adelaide, then followed by Perth, then followed by Melbourne. Can you believe it? The jostling of median dwelling values. Obviously, there's a bit of a different score when it comes to unit prices and house prices, but as a overall dwelling value, it's interesting to see market growth change the value proposition of different marketplaces. Welcome to the Urban Property Investor. I'm your host, Sam Saggers, here to help you crack the code of real estate wealth. Wow, I nearly forgot the opening line. Why? Because it is New Year's Day. Yes. Happy New Year. Happy 2025, everybody. What a day. What a day. Hopefully you're waking up having party pashed someone, party pashed a stranger, and of course, maybe at 12 o'clock, you got a little kiss. I hope that happened to you because there's nothing better. But tell you what, Happy New Year. It's 2025. We're alive. We're doing this again. We're back for another season. The big 2-5 is here and I'm here. I'm not letting you down, albeit I probably can comprehend no one's going to listen to the show today, because you probably got your ears ringing from a terrible hangover. But hopefully you didn't drink too much and you're, out and about doing something fun on this public holiday. Certainly more fun than listening to me. But generally, or as a tradition, we're going to keep our traditions alive. The final show of 2024 or the first show of 2025 really goes over a few things. We're going to do the 5 cities plan today. We're going to, of course, do the Golden Gopnik Award, which is always a great award to hand out. And of course, people hang out all year to just hear who the winner is of the biggest Gopnik of the year. But it's been a crazy year, 2024, the year that was. We've seen everything, haven't we? AI, robotics, basically game change how we work, things like chat GDP. It's GPT. I can never get that right. I don't even think it's a good name. I feel like they should come up with a better name. I don't know, all sorts of things. We've seen the grandparent economy. We've seen baby boomers migrate money into luxury real estate. We've seen the return to the office. People are coming back to the office. And certainly not just working from home. Now the phygital world is upon us. We're going to live both physically and digitally, which I think is great. I think it's great. I think it's a great new economy to live in. And of course, 2024, the year of inflation. We've brought it back. Is it going to stay where it should stay, or is it going to come out of its little bottle and rear up and bite us all? These are all the questions moving forward. Certainly next week I'll come back and talk about some of the threats when it comes to 2025. What could possibly go wrong? So if you love your doom, your next show should be right up your alley, because we'll dig into some of the geopolitical volatility that is within the world, and we'll look at certainly some of the touch points which might affect Australia's ability to grow. But of course, Australia in 2024 grew rapidly through migration, and really those net overseas migration numbers in 2023 and 2024 were amazing. Probably the big talking point of Australian property has been migration, or high levels of migration and low levels of supply. And of course, 2024 was the kind of year we tried to get our mojo on when it comes to building the target of 1.5 million well-located properties. And we went backwards. We didn't go forwards. Productivity is a problem. And that's a reality of the real estate community in 2024. We leave 2024 and enter 2025 with more people and less property. That pretty much sums up the year that was. But of course, we've got to do our awards, and there's no greater award than the Golden Gopnik Award. And of course, that goes to none other than the greatest menace of them all, the pest number one, Dan Andrews. Yes, you thought he was out of the news, but Dan Andrews has been appointed the mental health role for a non-for-profit. He is now the mental health advisor. Can you believe it? The man who created the longest lockdown in world history is now the chairman of a key youth mental health services organization. Wow. How wrong is that on so many levels? These people never cease to amaze me. How creepy they can be. And of course, I don't know, maybe Dan Andrews' entourage has said, Dan, if we can prove you love mental health, maybe we can get you back into the political arena. You can throw your hat back into the ring. I don't know. But this guy gets the Golden Gopnik Award for this particular move. It's nothing other than being a Gopnik. And of course, a Gopnik's a little thief, a little rascal, a little stealer, a little wrongdoer. And so we're going to give that to Dan Andrews. And of course, the Karen Award, we all remember Karen from COVID, from Brighton. Well, that goes to the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. On a Monday, talks about negative gearing issues, and by Friday goes and buys himself a $4 million home on a beach in the central coast of Australia, or central coast of New South Wales. So for that, you get the Whining Karen Award. And of course, nothing like, dealing with negative gearing and putting it to bed by buying a $4 million home. So I hand it to you. And of course, the Lake Widow Award. What is the weirdest real estate market in 2024? What has it been? I'm going to give it to Jindabyne in New South Wales. It is a lake. It is weird. And with climate change, it may just be on its last legs because there's never any snow in the basically New South Wales Alps anymore. So I don't have much hope for Jindabyne. Four Horsemen Award goes to the Victorian government. Yes, we know those horsemen, the big disruptors from either the Reserve Bank of Australia, the government of the day, the banks, or the regulators. Who was the biggest menace of them all this year? Well, it has to go to the Victorian government for, on one hand, creating a land tax, and on the other hand, going, why did we do that for? Now our market is very, very soft. Oh, let's solve it by creating free stamp duty. What a bunch of menaces, really just not knowing what they're doing. And of course, we can't go much further without mentioning Baba Vanga. And of course, Baba Vanga, the great clairvoyant from Bulgaria. She predicted World War II, Stalin's death, the cursed disaster, September 11th. She's been amazing over the years. Of course, this clairvoyant can see the future, and in 2025, she believes that human telepathy becomes a reality. We're going to basically be able to telepath our thoughts. And interesting enough, Elon Musk has actually put a chip in someone's brain, a disabled person, and been able to allow him to telepath his thoughts to a computer. So maybe Baba Vanga's onto something. She may get her prediction right. Maybe we are on that pathway. Does seem to be becoming a reality. We'll be able to talk to machines from our brains soon. But now that's out of the way. If you're still listening, if you're still here and you haven't moved on to a probably more fulfilling podcast, holy shit, that's my alarm. Sorry about that, folks. I've got to be somewhere in about half an hour, and that's a reminder to actually get moving in half an hour. So where did we end up to in 2024? Well, of course, we ended up with the slowing economy. We ended up with inflation peaking and returning to a much lower level, but not quite back into its box. We ended up in a place where consumer sentiment as an index fell. And of course, consumers, certainly the sentiment out there is not yet balanced. It is still lower than a balance point, but not by much. And of course, we saw iron ore fall off a cliff. And when it comes to marketplaces, we've still seen a huge level of interest in rising markets such as Adelaide, Perth, and Brisbane. And of course, your much softer marketplaces, which are also known as value marketplaces, are approaching their bottom, places like Melbourne. So if you want value, you can shop in Melbourne, maybe get yourself a discount. If you want momentum, you should be really considering places like Perth and Brisbane, which are what is known as momentum marketplaces. There's no right or wrong. It's just a different strategy. If you were to buy in Melbourne, you want to really get a good price, good location, maybe drive a little bit of a discount if you can. Of course, in Brisbane, you effectively can ride the growth wave. It might be a little bit more difficult to get a big, significant bargain. But certainly from a median value perspective, Sydney has always topped the marketplaces. But it's very, very interesting. At a dwelling value perspective, we're sort of ending the year with Sydney on top, followed by Brisbane, followed by Adelaide, then followed by Perth, then followed by Melbourne. Can you believe it? The jostling of median dwelling values. Obviously, there's a bit of a different score when it comes to unit prices and house prices, but as a dwelling, overall dwelling value, it's interesting to see market growth change the value proposition of different marketplaces. Brisbane, still low stock levels, as does the Gold Coast, which is obviously now part of that greater Brisbane story. And of course, in Melbourne, there's balanced stock levels, but you are seeing a shortage of new stock come to marketplace, or brand new real estate come to marketplace. Very similar in Sydney, and of course in Perth, we've got low stock levels as well. On market, people aren't putting their properties up for sale, and that's creating obviously a shortage of supply. If we look at how we ended 2024, certainly when it comes to what's under construction and what's marketed as new properties going to market as pre-construction off the plan, it is a disaster zone. Basically, every market in Australia does not have enough product going into the supply or going into marketing to be sold to reach these targets of the aggressive 1.5 million homes. We're going backwards, not forwards. And of course, if we have an affordability problem today, what does that actually mean 5 years from now? Well, we can see what it's going to mean. It's going to mean higher prices, because there really does not seem to be a solution at this point for the ability to supply the market with affordable real estate. Certainly a lack of supply coming through the funnel. And if you go back to, for example, in Melbourne, in say 2017, there was 20,000 properties under construction in the apartment space. if you fast forward to 2025, there's 3,000. So a city the size of Melbourne, it's got circa close to 6 million people these days. Certainly when you account for new arrivals, new immigration, it's a big, big city, and it's basically got 3,000 properties under construction, which are due to settle in that period, which is not a lot. Very similar in Brisbane, very similar in Sydney, very similar everywhere. There's just not enough product coming through the system. So, excuse me, when it comes to locations of new arrivals, certainly 4 states have won the battle of immigration. New South Wales has had circa 200,000 people. That's a mixture of new migration and also natural increases. 200,000 people it's grown by. And of course, most of those people will live in Sydney or Newcastle. So it's a lot of people, not a lot of properties being produced. In Melbourne, pretty similar. You're circa 180,000 people, massive amount. Not enough. How do you house 180,000 people with 3,000 apartments? I don't know how it gets solved. Obviously, that doesn't take into new construction of new housing, but certainly when that level of migration is here, it's certainly a big problem for government officials to deal with. Maybe we should invite the Golden Gopnik back to run the country. Maybe the mental health professor himself, Dan Andrews, could come back and save us all. But Queensland, certainly these are big numbers for Queensland. Like, you don't see these numbers typically, but this is circa 140,000 people, or Queensland grew by 140,000 people. And of course, a lot of them are going to live on the Gold Coast or Brisbane or Toowoomba, that sort of southeast Queensland precinct. And beautiful to see Western Australia gets over 50,000 new, basically citizens, new people into its economy. Big numbers for Western Australia, a mixture of net interstate migration and, of course, net overseas migration. And, of course, people having babies in Perth. It's baby central in Perth, which is great to see. So between the big 4 there, our big populous places, they're the ones growing through population at an extreme level. If you look at South Australia, it's sort of circa 25,000, ACT, circa just under 10,000, Tassie, maybe about 3,000, and Northern Territory, something similar. But all in all, if we were to think about how much Australia grew in 2024, it's quite interesting because in 2004, Australia grew by the size of Bendigo, or 104,000 people. In 2014, Australia grew by the size of Townsville, or 202,000 people. In 2024, Australia grew by the size of Canberra, or 510,000 people. So certainly as Australia compounds on itself and becomes a more populated place than it was in 2004, it's actually also increasing its migration intake to feed the system, if you like. And of course, as we get an aging population and more people in our economy, we kind of need to stimulate it with more people coming to the economy. The answer to our economy is quite often more people. So it'd be interesting if we do another 500,000 in 2025. That would be mind-blowing. And of course, if we don't build enough properties, supply and demand will do its thing. Real estate, at the end of the day, is a game of demand that matches supply. And of course, it does not seem to favour the supply side of the equation. If interest rates come down, which they're also expected to do in 2025, we may end up in a place where there is a little bit more demand coming back into the market and still no supply adding to the properties in the marketplace. And of course, I'll come back next week and talk about the kind of threats around interest rates, the what could go wrong when it comes to 2025. I think I don't like to be a doomsdayer, but I think it's a worthy conversation as to where to next for possible impact points for Australia. But I like to finish a year and start a new year by exploring my 5 cities plan. Now, my 5 cities plan is a really simple plan. Just buy 5 houses, 1 in Melbourne, 1 in Brisbane, 1 in Sydney, 1 in Adelaide, and 1 in Perth. Why? Because they're the biggest cities in Australia. Why? Because the biggest cities have the best jobs and generally are looked after as safe havens by the Australian federal government. So 5 cities, 5 properties. If you have been doing my 5 cities plan, which I know many of my clients have been doing, which I appreciate, by the way. Thank you for following the plan. I first worked on the plan many moons ago, but I think I first wrote about the plan publicly in 2016 when I wrote a book, The Future of Property Investing in Australia. I wrote that book and I documented the 5 cities plan. So when I tell the story of the 5 cities plan, I tend to link it to the day it was published in a book so that we can work off the same plan and come back every year and see how it's going. So in 2016, I basically published the median value for houses in Australia. Back then, a house in Sydney was $872,000. In 2016, a house in Melbourne was $614,000. A house in Perth was $615,000. A house in Brisbane was $489,000. And a house in Adelaide was the huge price of $469,000. Obviously, over the period between 2016 to 2024, I take the end of 2016 and the end of 2024, and then I look at the new maths of houses in those cities at a midpoint, the median price point. And then I work out, is, as simple as it sounds, investing this way a way to create wealth? And really, I have always recommended to people that if you follow this plan at a bare ass minimum, you'll get a 5% compounding return on itself. And after around 14 and a half years, your real estate will have doubled in value. If that's the worst you were to do in real estate, would that be okay? And for a lot of people, this is as simple as real estate needs to be, when it's simple as wealth creation needs to be. We can talk about renovations, we can talk about doing splitter blocks, but when it comes down to really investment as a saving principle, the 5 cities plan is as good as you'll get. So what was the total value in 2016 of a house in Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Brisbane, and Adelaide? Well, it was basically $3,060,000. $3,060,000. So, of course, along came inflation, along came COVID, along came price increases, property values went up, the Australian dollar was devalued by asset increases. And of course, today, if you were to find a midpoint house in Adelaide for $469,000, you would be so thrilled. But of course, that does not exist anymore. The new midpoint of Adelaide is $730,000 for a house. The new midpoint or median is 1.43 in Sydney. Melbourne, the median house price is 973. Brisbane, 850. As I said, Adelaide, 730, and Perth, 650. So by the end of 2024, which is basically 8 years after 2016, the national total value of the median house values of our top 5 cities with over 1 million people is $4,633,000. The gain, if you were doing this plan, and people are doing this plan, the absolute gain is $1,478,000. You are now a millionaire by virtue of the 5 cities plan. Congratulations. Well done, followers of the plan. Percentage gain, 48%. Annualized gain, this is the compounding effect, is 5%. Wow. If you go back to my book that I wrote in 2016, what did I say? I said that the growth rate that you can expect from the 5 cities plan will be 5%. It's in the book. I don't know what page, but let me see if I can flick through it. But as you know, I've got to run. The alarm clock went off. People need me. And of course, today is New Year's Day, so you're probably hungover and probably about to hang up and do something else anyway. So I thought I'd keep today short and sharp. No one wants a long podcast when you're sitting on the couch bleary-eyed. But get out and about, get some sun, go for a swim. It'll cure the hangover. But there you go, guys. The 5 cities plan does it again. Wow. Will we see the 2025 5 cities plan see a gain in those marketplaces? Or will the 5 cities plan stall? Well, you'll have to find out by coming back in 1 year's time. All right, folks, that's it from me. Keep well. We'll talk again soon. Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Property Investor. To never miss an episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app or on YouTube. I would love it if you could give the show a rating and share it with your friends and family. In between episodes, you can always keep in touch with me by connecting on social media over Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Until we meet again on the next episode of the Urban Property Investor, take care and bye for now.